It had been nearly 7 years for most players. 7 years of eagerness. After the release of Uncharted 4, fans were teased with an official reveal trailer at 2016's PlayStation Experience. 4 years of speculation and anticipation, until finally, June 19th, 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 was finally released. In order to understand how strongly I feel towards this game, I have to give some sort of a summary to the story, so be warned, this video will contain major spoilers for both The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. And if you need a summary for The Last of Us, make sure to check out my previous video, linked in the description below. This game opens in brilliant fashion, a recap of the first game's ending, and a well-paced gallop from one of Jackson's lookouts back to the heart of the town. A perfect reintroduction into the world Naughty Dog has created. Joel reveals to Tommy what happened the day he chose Ellie's life over humanity, and Tommy agrees to his choice. Quote, "I'll take it to the grave if I have to." From this moment, we pick up with Joel checking in on Ellie as she settles in a back house believed to be located in Joel's backyard. Ellie draws in her notebook, something we will revisit later, and Joel tries to establish a stronger relationship with her. Right off the bat, we can tell that the two of them are of different mindsets. Joel tries desperately to talk to Ellie, beating around the bush and avoiding any chance of revisiting conversation about the lie he's told her. Ellie remains cold and distant at first, until Joel busts out an old acoustic guitar with a moth printed on the fretboard. As promised, Joel vows to teach Ellie how to play, before doing the last thing he can think of in the moment to reconnect with her.
Promise me that you won't laugh.
I won't laugh. I won't.
I'm trusting you. If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts I've no need for any more, 'cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me.
This moment seemingly works in Joel's favor, with Ellie accepting the guitar and Joel's offer to teach her, as well as stopping him at the door to remind him about a joke he's heard. We then cut forward to 4 years later, in typical Last of Us fashion, and we are introduced to an 18-year-old Ellie waking up late for patrol. Jesse, a new character in the series, wakes Ellie and waits for her to get ready, while recapping the player with an event that took place the previous night, an event we have yet to understand the significance of. Ashley Johnson portrays Ellie as a very grumpy, mature adult, and by keeping continuity with the significance of the giraffes from the previous game, it's immediately clear Ellie is not a child anymore. We are then reintroduced into Maria, Tommy's wife, and get a small bit more context to what the issue was in regards to the previous night, with a character named Seth apologizing to Ellie for some nasty remarks. Ellie and Jesse meet up with Dina, another new character and a romantic interest of Ellie's, leading to Ellie and Dina going on their own separate mission while Jesse hopes to trade places with Joel and Tommy on patrol. Then, when you thought the world of The Last of Us couldn't pull any more surprises, the game cuts to a completely new character in a completely new setting. The player is then introduced to Owen and Abby, who, together with a small group of friends, hide out in an abandoned ski resort searching for Tommy and Jackson. Right off the bat, we, the audience, are put in a position where we aren't sure whether or not Abby and the others can be trusted. Them searching for Tommy can only mean one of two things: former friends or newfound enemies, and the fact that we get to play as one of them makes the anticipation all the more heart-wrenching. We then watch and play as Abby as she breaks off from her friends and heads down towards Jackson. She's upset, that much is clear. Her determination towards finding what she's looking for only puts the player more on edge at the constant buildup of suspense. From here we then cut back to Ellie and Dina, who bond over their romantic interest in each other while also on patrol. This is all set up as a tutorial-like prologue before the events of the true story begins, the context towards the theme of the game. It all takes place that way the player can really feel immersed in this world. We then cut back to Abby, who's on the run from a horde of infected. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on your view of this game, Abby is rescued by Joel and Tommy, and the three fend off the fight, falling back towards the ski resort. Everything seems to be working out well, almost too well, until Tommy and Joel reach the camp and introduce themselves to the group. Tommy is knocked unconscious, and Joel is shot in the knee with a shotgun. It's at this moment where our greatest fears as a player come to life. But before we can see any more of it, we cut back to Ellie and Dina, who are interrupted by Jesse. Jesse reveals that Joel and Tommy never made it to their last checkpoint. The three then separate, with us following Ellie as she stumbles across the ski resort and upon Abby beating Joel to death with a golf club. This scene is brutal. It's vile, haunting, and quite frankly really graphic. And it's enough to let us, the players, decide who's the antagonist of this story is. Ellie is pinned to the ground and essentially forced to watch as Abby kills Joel with a club to his skull. Abby and the others then wrestle with what to do with Tommy and Ellie, and much to our surprise, they're left alive, knocking Ellie unconscious and essentially forcing her to relive her grief when Dina wakes her up to Joel's beaten and bloodied body. Once Ellie and Tommy return to Jackson, they wrestle with the idea of where to go and what to do. They want their vengeance, however Tommy does not want Ellie to follow. He tricks her into giving him one day to figure out what they'll do. However, the next morning, when Ellie visits Joel's grave, it's made abundantly clear that Tommy has set off without her. Maria willingly gives Ellie and Dina a horse, not for the purpose of revenge, but to bring Tommy back unharmed. This isn't meant to be a revenge mission, but a rescue, and from there we transition to Seattle Day 1. Ellie and Dina tell each other stories about the first time they've taken a life, while entering the city in search for clues. They know Abby and her crew are stationed in Seattle due to Tommy spotting the Washington Liberation Front patch on their jackets. Here, the two of them are taken by surprise as Ellie is captured and interrogated, with one of her captors being present at Joel's death. Dina manages to distract the WLF members, while Ellie frees herself from her binds and kills the first few members. And from this moment forward, Ellie's toes dip into the pool of blood she is eventually going to dive headfirst into. Ellie and Dina fight their way out of the building, now with the names of each person on Ellie's hit list, and while they run for their lives, Dina gets hit with a wave of sickness in her stomach. The two are forced to take shelter at the Pinnacle Theater, where Dina reveals that she thinks she may be pregnant, with the baby being Jesse's due to their past relationship before the events of this game. Ellie lets Dina rest, and we follow Ellie as she explores the theater, eventually finding the stage where she encounters a guitar. Here, she plays a small portion of Pearl Jam's Future Days, calling back to the moment Joel sang it all those years ago. However, stricken by grief, she is unable to finish playing, because the memory only brings her pain. Between days, we transition to flashbacks of Ellie's life between the events of this story and the one of the previous game. This time we visit 3 years before the game's events, on Ellie's 15th birthday, where Joel gives her a very special birthday surprise. The two of them arrive at a history museum, filled with dinosaur fossils and space equipment. Similarly to the first game, whenever Ellie is around animals, her childlike innocence sparks out once more, even if it's for a brief moment. Joel's present to Ellie is a cassette record of NASA's first trip to the moon, something very near and dear to Ellie, whose childhood dream was to become an astronaut. Soon after, while the pair continue to explore, Ellie's trip is ruined when she finds graffiti depicting the Fireflies as liars. This essentially reminds Ellie that no matter how hard she cares for Joel, she can never be close to him the way they were because she can't help but feel lied to. Seattle, Day 2. We then pick up the next day, with Dina looking to be experiencing morning sickness. She's managed to find and repair an old radio, and found the frequency the WLF used to communicate with themselves. The two start piecing together their codes when the WLF call in backup due to a lone trespasser, killing off some of their crew. Ellie and Dina figure the trespasser to be Tommy, and decide to go after him. However, in Dina's condition, Ellie leaves her behind to decode their locations while she goes out to find Tommy. Outside the theater, Ellie heads over to Hillcrest, killing more WLF members until she unexpectedly runs into Jesse, not Tommy. He reveals that he followed them out of Jackson and into Seattle, and the two team up to escape Hillcrest and get back to Dina at the theater. Once they return, we are treated to another flashback sequence, this time 2 years before the events of the game, where Tommy teaches Ellie how to shoot a rifle. The two of them return to their outpost, where Ellie is shown to have grown more distant from Joel. Tommy forces the two on a mission together to talk things through, however they don't speak on any of it, and instead go on to search for new strings for her guitar. The two team up and kill a bloater, and we come to find 2 dead teenagers from Jackson, one turned into an infected. They left Jackson together to pursue a different lifestyle and didn't make it an hour before being bitten. One shot herself in the head, while the other cowered and turned. They left a note behind that deeply affects Ellie, who too feels cheated out of choice. Much like the couple having desires for a greater purpose and being robbed from them, Ellie giving her life for a cure that never was feels like a parallel in her eyes. And from here, we return to Seattle Day 2. Dina has managed to decode more WLF secrets and gains information that Owen has apparently turned against the WLF and that Abby has gone AWOL. The group also gets confirmation that one of the members who was present during Joel's death, Nora, is at the Seattle hospital preparing shipments. Ellie sets off without Jesse or Dina to find Nora to get information on where Abby could be, which leads to a confrontation between her and Nora. Nora antagonizes her, claiming that Joel got what he deserved, and Ellie chases Nora throughout the hospital recklessly, eventually leading to the two falling into a spore-infested basement. Ellie, still immune to the infection, continues pursuit of Nora, who collapses by a corner, slowly suffocating and turning. Here, Ellie does more than just dip her toe into the lake of vengeance. Her legs are practically all the way in at this point, as she tortures Nora into revealing where Abby is. Once she returns to the theater, she is horrified by her own actions. She's crossed a line of no return now. All she has left is the mission. And that's when we flash back to 17-year-old Ellie searching through St. Mary's Hospital for any signs, any sort of proof that Joel has lied to her all this time. She finds a recording tape, one belonging to a fireflyer Joel failed to kill, confirming her suspicions. He's lied to her this entire time, and as Joel arrives, showing deep worry for Ellie after running off, Ellie demands that he admits what he has done. Joel finally admits the truth and breaks Ellie's heart. She agrees to return to Jackson, however their relationship is done. The two of them have never been further apart. Seattle, Day 3. Ellie knows she can find Abby at the Seattle Aquarium, and after Jesse recovers from his injury, he and Ellie leave Dina behind once more. Jesse reveals that he knows Dina is pregnant, which means he asks Ellie to swear to him that if they find Tommy, they all head back to Jackson for Dina's well-being. Ellie reluctantly agrees. The two kill off more WLF and infected, eventually leading off towards a breaking point where one of the WLF members reveals that they have found Tommy. Jesse decides to go rescue Tommy, while a vengeance-stricken Ellie's heart forces her to abandon Tommy in search for Abby. Despite nature itself telling Ellie not to pursue, she does so anyways, and when she arrives, she kills an attack dog and finds Owen and Mel together. Now I haven't mentioned Mel up to this point for a reason, and that reason is shock value for those who haven't played these games yet. Mel is Owen's current girlfriend, a medic who was present with Owen and Abby when Joel died. She is pregnant with Owen's child, and Ellie kills her and Owen when they refuse to give up Abby's location. The realization of what has just occurred, the guilt and the horror Ellie feels towards herself once she realizes she's killed a pregnant woman, is enough to finally break her. Ellie collapses to the floor, dropping the map she's carried since arriving into Seattle, and in just the right time, Tommy and Jesse arrive to safely return Ellie to the theater. Dina watches over for a while, as Ellie rests to try and avoid thinking about the actions she's just done. When she awakens the next morning, she and Jesse talk for a brief moment, readying themselves to return to Jackson. Jesse understands Ellie's disappointment in regards to not finding Abby. However, terrifyingly enough, Abby finds them. Once they hear a disturbance in the next room, the two rush over to aid Tommy, and Jesse is shot dead. Tommy is held at gunpoint, and Ellie is left alone with no way of defending herself.
Don't you do it, Ellie. Get out of here.
Stand up! Now!
Don't you fucking dare!
Shut the fuck up! Fuck. Alright. Stop! Stop!
Toss your weapon.
Toss your weapon!
Fuck!
No.
I know why you killed Joel. He did what he did to save me. There is no cure because of me. I am the one that you want. Just let him go.
You killed my friends. We let you both live. And you wasted it.
Now, if you thought nothing could get any more suspenseful than this moment, you'd be wrong, because immediately after this cutscene, we transition into a flashback of young Abby searching for her father. Here we find out Owen and Abby had a romantic relationship prior to the events of the second game, and that Abby's father was the surgeon meant to operate on Ellie to save the world. Yep. Every choice has a consequence in the world of The Last of Us. Joel's choice to save Ellie indirectly resulted in the death of Abby's father, which set Abby on a revenge mission to kill Joel. That decision builds up fuel for Tommy and Ellie setting off on their own revenge plot. This endless cycle of death and trauma and violence will continue on forever unless someone breaks from it. And to make matters even harder for the player, the next 10 plus hours you are tasked with playing as this game's villain. A very ballsy move by Naughty Dog. They forced the players to watch the story of Seattle unfold from Abby's perspective, showcasing why she went AWOL on the WLF, what led Owen to turn on his own group, and who the WLF's mysterious boss is, and the significance of the Seraphites and their ongoing war. Once Abby's flashback finishes, we witness the repercussions of Joel's actions from the first game. We cut to Seattle Day 1, this time from Abby's perspective. She and her friends have returned to the WLF's home base, and Abby is clearly shaken up by what she's done to Joel. She still believes he's deserved it, but the guilt from going so far as to brutally kill him stays with her. She doesn't sleep properly at night, and neither does Owen, according to Mel. We then get reintroduced to Ellie's enemies, including Mel and Manny. Manny is the asshole who spat on Joel's dead body, and to be quite honest, by the end of this game, he was still the one character I couldn't completely forgive, and I still genuinely hated. Day 1 focuses mostly on introducing the players to the humanity side of these characters, specifically Abby, Manny, Owen, and Mel. Mel, for some dumb reason, is cleared for active duty, despite being very pregnant. Abby and Manny are tasked with keeping her alive and well when they get ambushed by Seraphites. This also provides us with more context as to who these Scars, or Seraphites, are. For the purpose of this video, I'll call them Scars. Scars are a group of cult members who act as the WLF's rivals in Seattle. They occupy a small portion of land on a nearby island. However, Isaac, the WLF's leader, wants to raid the island and kill off every one of them because he believes that they are a band of lunatics who can't be reasoned with. Once Abby and the others return to base, Abby and Manny meet Isaac, voiced by Jeffrey Wright himself. Here, Abby finds out why Owen is considered an enemy to the WLF. Apparently, while he and his teammate were out on patrol, Owen saved the Scar's life and shot his partner, who walked himself back to base with a bullet in him to tell Isaac Owen was a traitor. Abby demands Isaac let her bring him in, but Isaac refuses, claiming he needs everyone sharp and ready to raid the Scar Island. Abby leaves regardless to find Owen, and understand why he chose the life of a Scar over the life of his own, or even the life of his own partner. From here we flash back to the two of them together in the aquarium by the docks. The relationship is cute at first, but you quickly realize that as long as Abby keeps her obsession with finding Joel, she has no hope for happiness in her life. Owen tries desperately to cling on to Abby, even stating that they are allowed to be happy together, and he tries enough to pull her away from her vendetta, at least for now. When we return to the present, Abby is captured by the Seraphites. She frees herself with the help of two other Scar children named Yara and Lev, and helps them find shelter for the night. Abby then sets off to the aquarium to find Owen, believing he took shelter there. Once she arrives, she was right, and Owen explains that he saved the Scar because he was just a little boy. The two fight over priorities and morals, which leads to some sexy time. This time, we get interrupted by one of Abby's nightmares, where she returns to St. Mary's Hospital, the place where her dad died. Here, when she enters the surgery room, instead of finding her father dead on the ground, she finds Yara and Lev hung in the wilderness. I'll return to the significance of this dream later. Seattle Day 2. When Abby wakes up, her priorities change, suddenly feeling a need to check on Yara and Lev's safety. She can't explain why at first, but once she finds them, Yara's injury to her arm makes her at risk of dying. As a favor for saving her life, Abby takes Yara and Lev back to the aquarium, where they coincidentally find Mel. Mel treats Yara's shattered arm, however, she needs supplies from the hospital, so Abby and Lev set off together to gather them. Yes, the same hospital where Nora is located. Once Abby arrives, Nora is still alive, implying her arrival takes place before Ellie. Abby fights off a massive breed of infected, including a new one named the Rat King, and gets the supplies she needs from the basement of the hospital. Once she returns to the aquarium to treat Yara, Yara is saved, and we return to another one of Abby's dreams. This time, she enters the room where her father died, but she finds him alive. Seattle Day 3. Mel gets jealous of Owen, clearly caring for Abby more than her, and advises Abby that in order to keep Yara and Lev safe, they should be as far away from her as possible. This seems to work on Lev, who flees back to the island of the Scars in order to convince his mother to join them in fleeing Seattle. Yara points out to Abby that Lev will die because he disobeyed traditions and chooses to identify as a boy rather than a girl, and this leads to Abby and Yara following Lev while Owen and Mel stay behind to repair the boat and escape Seattle. Here, Abby splits off with Yara, who agrees to wait behind because of her arm. Abby then reunites with Manny, who is called from the WLF backup because of a sniper that is killing off WLF members. In a brief detour, Abby tries to help Manny kill the sniper. However, the sniper, Tommy, kills Manny and falls into the ocean after a struggle with Abby. Abby then gets a boat for herself and Yara and travels to the island, where they finally find that Lev has killed his mother in self-defense. She was so into her beliefs of the cult that she assaulted her son and attempted to kill him because he changed his gender. Yara and Abby convince Lev to leave the island, and this leads to a WLF invasion, where Isaac and a few other WLF members catch Abby in the act of protecting the Scars. Yara dies saving her brother and her friend's life, and Abby and Lev escape and return to the aquarium, where the two of them find Owen and Mel dead, and a bloody map leading towards Ellie's hideout. Abby's rage builds inside her, and we finally return to that moment at the theater. Jesse is dead, Ellie is defenseless, Tommy is down, and Abby has a gun to Ellie while Lev has his bow trained on Tommy. Tommy gives Ellie a chance to run, but ultimately gets shot in the face and in his leg. Abby gives chase to Ellie, and in a terrifying subversion of expectations, we play as Abby, now tasked to kill Ellie. Round after round, we watch as Abby beats Ellie to a pulp. We even almost killed Dina, if not for Lev being the voice of reason, and the one person not overcome with vengeance in this moment. Lev single-handedly saves Ellie and Dina's lives, the second time that they are spared. This time with Abby being free from her prison of rage and endless revenge. She has Lev to care for now, and she knows the only thing that matters is protecting his life. Killing Ellie and Dina would put his life at risk, the same way killing Joel put the lives of all of her friends at risk. And from this moment, we cut to the farm. In a lot of ways, this felt like a very bittersweet place to end the game. A very emotionally devastating journey. We witnessed another time jump, this time with Ellie and Dina parenting little JJ, Jesse's child. They look to live outside of the town of Jackson, alone and at peace, until one day when Tommy visits. and we get to see the damage Abby and Lev have done to him. He's missing an eye, he can barely walk straight, and even tries emotionally manipulating Ellie into following up on a lead about where Abby could be. Dina kicks Tommy out of the house, but not before Ellie's grief poisons her soul once more. She can't let go of her path of revenge. Not even her newfound family can give her peace. She's tortured with nightmares and PTSD of Joel's death, and believes the only way to put a stop to it is by killing Abby. And just like that, after a heartbreaking goodbye to Dina, and the destruction of her relationship, Ellie sets off to Santa Barbara. In the game's final act, we watch as Abby and Lev's hope for a better tomorrow is restored. Owen was right. They managed to find contact with surviving Fireflies through a working radio. But before they can celebrate, the two are ambushed and captured by Rattlers, a gang of hostile survivors who enslave each other and force them to provide them with the means to survive. Before we get to see how sadistic these Rattlers can be, we cut to Ellie, who's arrived at Santa Barbara and is hot on Abby's trail. Ellie stumbles across and activates a Rattler trap, which leads her to being impaled in her side and bleeding out. She manages to free herself out of determination to her mission and kills 2 Rattlers who came to finish her off, getting information about where Abby is being held. Despite her injury, Ellie pushes forward, slaughtering any Rattler or any infected that comes in her way of Abby. Until finally, this happens.
Abby? Please. It's you.
From this moment, it looks as though Abby is more concerned with saving Lev rather than facing Ellie, a real eye-opener for the person playing the game. She even picks him up and walks him over to a nearby boat, despite how weak and tired she must feel from being strung up on a pillar for God knows how long. Ellie follows Abby to the shore, grabbing her own boat, ready to leave everything behind, when the memory of Joel refuses to let go of Ellie. Her rage takes over once more, this time going as far as to threaten to kill Lev if Abby doesn't submit to a final fistfight. The two have their beatdown. Ellie tries desperately to hurt Abby as much as possible before killing her, which ultimately results in her losing 2 fingers in the process. Once she gets brought to the edge, she starts drowning Abby in an endless ocean of blood. Joel returns to her once more, this time a new memory, one we the player have not seen before. This one memory is enough to save Abby's life, and Ellie removes herself from on top of Abby. She sobs, begging Abby to leave. And in her final moments in Santa Barbara, she's alone. All her anger, all the guilt, the vengeance, it all fades away in this one moment of weakness. Ellie's thrown away her entire life because of this mission of revenge, And when she finally gets her moment, her chance for revenge, she gives it up because she knows in her heart that everything she has done to get to this point has not been worth it. She's let her anger control her for so long, and in return she's lost everything and everyone. Her greatest fear, one she's told us in the first game, has come true.
Being by myself. I'm scared of ending up alone.
Once Abby flees Santa Barbara, Ellie returns to her farm. This time, it's empty, quiet, and all dusty, like no one's lived in it for months. The only room that remotely resembles a full house is left in her sketching and painting room. All her stuff was left behind, while everything that resembled the family, Dina, JJ, is gone. And in the game's final moments, Ellie picks up Joel's old guitar, the same one with the moth printed on the fretboard, and attempts to play Future Days one last time. But she can't. The loss of her fingers leaves her in a position where the one thing that tied her to Joel so closely, the one thing that kept his memory alive with her, can no longer be. The pain Ellie has endured throughout this entire story was all out of honor for the father she once had. But it was more about revenge. Ellie and Joel were believed to be on bad terms before he was ripped away from her. They had their arguments, they took their space apart. We got to see the overprotective side of Joel and the rebellious nature of Ellie. Everything was leading us, the player, to believe that Ellie was fighting because she felt guilty, when in reality, Ellie was fighting because Joel was taken from her the moment she allowed herself to try and forgive him for his biggest lie. This game was never about Ellie getting revenge because of guilt. This game was about Ellie wanting revenge for never getting the chance to forgive herself, as well as Joel. The chance to make amends and to repair a relationship that was ripped away from her when Abby killed Joel. Her driving factor this entire game was because she never got the chance to fix things. Abby is not the antagonist of this story. Ellie isn't the antagonist of this story either. They were both their own demons. Ellie with her connection to Joel, and Abby with her nightmares. Ellie refuses to face her guilt and instead pins all of her anger out on Abby and anyone she associates with. At least until the game's final battle, when she realizes she's been the monster this whole time. Joel killed Abby's father to save Ellie's life. Abby gets revenge for her father, but is tortured by the memory of what she's done in the form of nightmares. Her cycle of violence would end when she met Yara and Lev, when she would come to realize that life isn't about fighting for the dead, it's about honoring them and protecting the living. Ellie doesn't learn this lesson until she has Abby pinned down at the beach, but by then it's already too late for her. She's already lost Dina, she's lost JJ, and everyone she cares about. While Abby learns forgiveness for herself and for her actions, she has the chance to hold on for a happy ending with Lev. Ellie loses that chance for a happy ending because she learns her lesson after losing everyone she's cared for. Abby's nightmares represent her state of mind. The first of seeing her father's death again reminds her why she's on her quest of vengeance. The second, showcasing Yara and Lev's death, represents her guilt and her lesson to be learned to protect the living, to care for someone other than herself and her own selfish goals she needs to let go of. Her third, of her father being alive and proud of her, represents fulfillment. She's found her new purpose. She's let go of that cycle of violence, and she's able to move forward and begin healing. A common criticism I think people have with the Abby portion of this game is that people can't grow to care for Abby and her friends because they are killed rather quickly by Ellie and Tommy. While true, the fact that you still spend time with these characters before they are killed is meant to showcase their humanity regardless of perception. They are still human. They all have their own personal lives. They all have people they care for, and so on. In reality, they're no different than Ellie, or Joel, or Tommy, or Abby. They are not monsters the way Ellie is manipulated into thinking they are, the way we are manipulated into thinking they are at the start of this journey. No one is inherently evil. It's all down to perception. If you feel nothing for Abby and her friends after getting to know their real lives, their true selves, then you are not allowing yourself to understand this game's intention. You're robbing yourself of the experience that is to be immersed into this world. You are robbing yourself of the experience that is to be immersed into this world. You're missing the point. You don't have to love these characters. You only need to recognize that people are people. You only need to be willing to understand where these people are coming from. Naughty Dog has done a spectacular job bringing this world to life in ways you don't expect from a video game. The Last of Us Part 2 is the most immersed I've ever been in a game's story. Every parallel, every theme, every detail is crafted to perfection in order to give the player the best experience in feeling like you are truly a part of this world. I've played through this story 5 times to full completion, and I still find new details that make you truly appreciate this game. In Abby's portion of Seattle Day 1, after Yara and Lev free Abby from being hung to death, the markings of the rope remain on her neck for the rest of the game. Abby's compassion and care for Lev parallels Joel's relationship with Ellie in the first game. Ellie's relationship with Dina falls apart the same way her relationship with Joel did, because Ellie refuses to let go of the problem at stake. Ellie takes furniture from Joel's old house and places it in her farmhouse, as if to indicate that she hasn't moved on from her pain, and that she carries it wherever she goes. At the start of the game, Ellie keeps Sam's toy, the one she gave him in the first game, as if to represent that she holds herself accountable for all the lives that had been lost. The story Ellie finds at the library about the bunny and the horse parallels Joel's reasoning for lying to her and how Ellie and Dina feel towards their mission. "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. I know you're upset. What if we talked like this for a bit? Would that help? I didn't mean to grab you like that. I hope I didn't hurt you. Even mommies are scared sometimes. I'm okay. I'm really scared too. I get how angry you are. I miss him too. But you can't scream like that. I just want... I need... I know. I love you very much. I won't let anything happen to you. I love you too." Boris the Bow Hunter. The series of notes Ellie finds about him throughout Seattle Day 2 directly relates to her own mission. Boris was famous for being the best infected killer in Seattle. using a bow and arrow to do so. However, one day he discovers that the WLF killed his daughter, and that his friends joined out of fear rather than back him up. He kills them all in the name of revenge, and pushes to do the same to the WLF. However, his story ends when he ends up bitten and turned into a stalker. The same stalker Ellie kills and retrieves her bow from in her portion of the game. Without even realizing it, Ellie fights not only for the revenge of Joel, but for the revenge of Boris and his daughter, using his own weapon to tear down the WLF for good. The Last of Us Part 2 is a game about humanity and relationships. It's so much more than just a zombie apocalypse storyline. The infected may be monsters in their own right, but the true monster of this game is vengeance and what it does to the people of this world. It alters beloved characters and turns them cruel. It manipulates the player into believing that Abby is the real villain, and once we realize she isn't, we're left to beg and plead for Ellie not to fall victim to her never-ending cycle of rage. The fact that we play as Abby in the theater and are tasked with hunting and killing Ellie can turn people away from this story, but for others, the struggle in us comes from the fact that we know neither is the villain in this situation. They're both victims who use their pain to fuel each other into wanting to kill one another. The struggle here relies on personal preference. Do you root for the beloved protagonist turned cruel? Or do you root for the once believed to be antagonist turned protagonist? The misunderstood victim of trauma who overcomes her vengeance? Or the victim who refuses to let that vengeance go? This is what The Last of Us Part 2 is all about. This game never gives you a choice, just like in the first. The Last of Us Part 2 looks to pose the ultimate question of perception for your own reflection. The one thing I ask you to take into consideration before debating whose side you're meant to be on is this. After sitting through the most brutal cutscene in the game, watching Abby beat Ellie and Dina half to death, Lev asks to spare the two. Abby is able to do so because she has moved past her vengeance. Lev is that chance to move past her vengeance, a decision we know Ellie is incapable of making, especially after the death of Jesse. The truth is, Abby is not the only horrible person in this game. Everyone has their own demons. Everyone has their own reasons for the choices they make and the choices that they've made, and everyone suffers for their consequences. The only way anyone is left to be redeemed is to let go of their demons and to move past their trauma. And everyone we follow fails. Everyone loses everything they care for, except for Abby, who has Lev. And they have each other. The only chance for redemption Ellie has comes in the game's final moments, where she chooses to leave the farmhouse and Joel's guitar behind, potentially in search for a new purpose, or to rebuild the one she's broken. The ambiguous ending can be taken as two things. The feeling of hope for a brighter future, hope to repair her happy life, or in search for a happier life, or a feeling of beyond desolation.
Yeah, there we go. It's pretty, right? Hey, you know what? I'm gonna teach you how to play guitar when your hands are bigger. And you're not pooping your pants all the time. It's alright. Everybody does it. Got a lot of stories to tell you. When you're older. Much older. I don't even know where to begin.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but I think this game warrants it, especially with it being over 30 hours of gameplay, and I really wanted to make sure I covered everything in regards to story and the details and how moving and powerful this can be. It was definitely an experience, and The Last of Us Part 2 has become my favorite game of all time for all the reasons listed in this video and many more that I did not get to cover. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.